Wellness by Designs, and I'm your host, Amy Skilton. And joining us today is Liza Twohill, a naturopath who is very passionate about empowering clinicians to tackle complex chronic diseases. And her approach really looks at addressing the hidden toxic burden within the context of a naturopathic care model. And I'm really excited to be chatting with her today because she has a very interesting legacy and a really interesting patient demographic, which we can all learn from. But a little bit about Liza before I bring her on. She is a respected naturopath, mentor, and research clinician with over 25 years of clinical practice. And as I said before, her expertise lies in supporting individuals with really complex and chronic health conditions. Now, Liza actually lives and works in regional and remote Australia, and this has really shaped her practice and her as a clinician, allowing her to refine grassroots naturopathic approach through food as medicine, herbal and lifestyle therapies, as well as environmental medicine and really practical interpretations of pathology results. Now, Liza is a passionate advocate for complementary medicine being integrated into primary health care, and her clinical experience is matched by her commitment to mentoring other practitioners. So we will absolutely touch on that today if you're interested in learning from her. And lastly, in addition to her clinical and mentoring roles, Liza is an adjunct professional fellow at the National Centre for Naturopathic Medicine at Southern Cross University and a current board director of the Naturopath and Herbalist Association of Australia, also known as NHAA. Liza, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's an honour.
An absolute pleasure. Well, look, before we dive into the juicy topic we're going to be chatting about today, I'd love to hear more about how you got started in complementary medicine, where being located in remote and regional parts of Australia came into this, and also your role on the NHAA board and through Southern Cross University, like how you're really, I guess, injecting your passion and love into the landscape of our profession.
Yeah, okay, there's lots of questions there.
Yes.
So my journey, I'm located in Dubbo, New South Wales, and I've been here since the late 2003. And I was at that stage an early career naturopath. I was in, I think, 4 years out. We relocated for work, for my husband's work. And I was pretty devastated actually at the time, thinking that my profession would be over. I didn't think that I would be able to earn a living as a naturopath out here because there wasn't really anyone out here. I wasn't sure about what I could do. And as I've learned in the last 20-something years, it's quite different. And I have a passion in chronic health, environmental health, and just complex chronic health disease. My journey into naturopathy, I've actually been exposed to naturopathic lifestyle since I was about 3. So my parents got into it when I was a toddler, along with my large family. And so I've always had that background, I suppose, in holistic care and lifestyle medicine, food as medicine. And when I was in my I think I was 23, I decided I wanted to learn. I was very interested in the mental health aspects and the gut microbiome and how it impacted. And I decided to study naturopathy back then. So I went to Sydney and spent a fair bit of time there doing that. So that's kind of my fast-tracked journey. It's always been in my blood to do what I do. And the fast forward the last decades, I suppose, where I am now with our profession is to really, I am passionate about our profession and being in primary healthcare and actually working in a grassroots level. So that's my input now as a board member. I'm really wanting to give back to the profession and actually pass on, my wisdom, if you like, or anything that I've learnt over the years. I do have a busy practice and I've seen a lot over the years. And I feel now that I'm in a place to really to have an opinion, I suppose, with where we sit in providing care or best care for people. And the university, well, I'm just really part of the community member, if you like, or a professional in the education standards, and just also they're wanting to have people like myself who have been doing it for a while and to give feedback on how we can transition the students coming through. I do a lot of student supervision, so I have a lot of students who come through into my business and just do the best I can in providing what it is that we do.
Fantastic. Wow,
Yeah.
what a diverse way of sharing all of your gifts and your own experience, which is just absolutely incredible. And the intention for our chat today actually is to tap into that a little bit more deeply as it relates to your geographical location and
Yeah.
working with the demographic that you do. So, you mentioned that you work with some of the most complex chronic disease cases, and as you know, clinicians have no doubt learned over time, often those really stubborn, tricky, complex chronic cases have got an element of environmental influence in them. If it's not the primary thing, it's a significant variable. And when we talk about environmental medicine, that's very broad. That can include, you know, things like chemicals in our water and our food and in our building materials. It includes the electromagnetic climate of the home, for example, and the microbiome of the home when we look at it through the lens of water damage and mold. But in particular for you, in the area that you're working in, you've got a lot of agricultural chemicals that also layer into the mix. And so I'd love to hear like how you approach things when a patient walks through your door and
Yeah.
you see, you know, and this is what it commonly looks like, is lots of different diagnoses that don't appear to be connected, lots of different symptoms. They often have a laundry list. They've often been put in the too hard basket by other practitioners who perhaps got a narrower view and scope of medicine. I'd love to hear, like, where do you start? What patterns do you notice? And in particular, knowing what you know about the humans that you take care of in your area, like how you go about assessing exposure there as well.
Yeah, this is taking years for me to streamline what I do, and there isn't one one model that fits all. But I am located where there are a lot of agricultural chemicals. Also, mining is in the scope of where I am, and also wineries. There's a lot of wineries, and so they're three industries, if you like, that do utilise a lot of chemicals, and I am fascinated at whether or not they have an impact on chronic disease, and I really feel they do. And it's about looking at whether or not that fits that person that walks through the door. So the way in which I would address people when they come in. I don't assume that everyone has a toxic load or a body burden. I just look at the patterns and I do lots of comprehensive assessment. So first of all, you really need to actually assess people and ask the right questions. So I do a lot of intake forms before I even see them. So I already know how their body systems or what they perceive their body systems, whether they've got problems. And I also do a timeline journey. So I'm very interested in people's where they live, what they do, what their parents did, what their grandparents did, and if they've got health issues, even if they're not diagnosed, but health issues, where those things started, and just having and also looking at their family history. So what their parents, grandparents, what kind of diseases they have had. They are all the big red flags for me to look at whether there's a potential body load that we as naturopaths or holistic professionals can do in order to facilitate healing. So that is the beginning of the journey. I do see people face to face and through telehealth, but I look at them. I have a look at them. I see if they've got edema, looking at their eyes, looking at their tongue, their nails, and just getting a feel for what their journey is. And I just have a chat with people to see, when did things change for them, or because obviously people who come to people like us, they often haven't responded to normal care. So they're the non-responders. They're people who have got diabetes, for example, or heart disease, or insulin resistance, or weight that just won't change, or endocrine issues. They've done the right thing. They're doing what they've been told, but it hasn't worked. So that's something that I put in my in my notes and in my brain to think, okay, well, why? And I do look for patterns. So I do look for patterns of chronic inflammation that won't go away with appropriate treatment. I look at immune function. I look at hormonal dysregulation, skin, and neurological. So often there's a gut, immune, gut, brain connection there. And so these are the patterns. And people don't often think they're connected, obviously. They're coming in because they're feeling unwell. And but they're the things that I do. Mitochondrial function is definitely, I mean, people don't come in and say, I've got mitochondrial problems, but that's what I'm thinking, and that's what I test. And I do a lot of testing. So that's the other final part, is that I will look at bloods. I get standard bloods done, or the GP will do that. I have a fairly good relationship with GPs and specialists in managing and helping work as a team. So bloods can tell us a lot about how their kidneys and liver and how their body's working. And I also do a lot of functional testing to address the underlying areas. Yeah.
Mm. Well,
So,
speaking of patterns, like I know when we chatted before hand, we talked about exposure to farm chemicals versus
yeah.
heavy metal detox. Are there key red flags in an intake form and symptomatology where you're like, oh, this looks like heavy metals, or this looks like, agricultural chemicals, or just a general toxic load? Or is it a matter of you just know there's an elevated body burden, failure to respond, and testing's the only way to figure that
Yeah.
out?
That's a great question. It's really complicated now. It's not black and white because we are using more pesticides and fungicides and herbicides in our landscape and in agriculture. It's increased hugely since the Second World War, but predominantly since the 1970s. It's just gone up. So that has to be in our water source, in our food, in our soil. And some of those will have heavy metal particles in them, and then we've got mining. So it's very hard to isolate what it really is. And so for me, I do test those. And so I don't do this straight up. I look at what they're coming in for and their risk analysis. So if they are a person who works in the mines, well, it's not rocket science that they have exposure. So, and they get tested for acute toxic load, but I'm looking at a body load, a body burden, which is then storing in their system, wherever that may be. And so I will do things like organic acids. You can measure urinary glyphosates to get an idea of whether they're dumping stuff out. You can do environmental pollutants through urine, because kidney and bowel and skin and hair are the areas of elimination. So that's where it's going to come out. And I do hair analysis to look at heavy metals. So that's probably, to answer your question, I think that's what I would do. But I don't think that, and not everyone can afford these, by the way. So some people, if we just have a conversation about the reality that potentially that is having an effect on their health, and then I would go straight back to looking at their liver and their kidney, because the liver and the kidney and also their autoimmune potential, they're the red flags and indicators of whether the person is not functioning well in chronic disease or whether we're healing. So sometimes I just do that, We're looking for different enzymes in liver pathways to make sure that they're improving and they're doing the best they can with, because not everyone can remove themselves from that environment. That's the thing.
That's right. You have to balance, that is their livelihood or the location
Yeah.
their family are settled in, and
Yeah.
supporting them as best you can. So
Yeah.
looking at obviously assessment in an ideal world, we could access functional testing for everybody and get the
Yeah.
complete picture. But also, once you have enough experience, you don't even necessarily need to know the agent. You can just see which systems of the body are under load and actually start to treat. But when you have sort of arrived at that point where you're going to start treating,
Yeah.
it's obviously complex cases. It's not the case of a couple
Not
of
that
weeks.
easy.
It's not that easy. It's not
Yeah.
just like, here's the basic protocol and it'll be a couple of months. There's often a journey and a roadmap that has to be laid out for patients, and it's different for everyone, of course. But in terms of like knowing how to start and where you want to take them, what is your thought process as you map out that journey for a client?
Yeah, this is where I've learnt lots of lessons over the years, you know, because you can make people very sick if you go in too hard too soon and you don't understand what you're doing. And I think this is where, as naturopathic professionals, we're a step ahead because we are trained in treating people holistically and looking at the organs of elimination and setting up the body to heal. So there is a process that I would go through. There are probably 6 areas. So first of all, I would definitely do a lot of assessments. So, and I don't have to do all the testing, but I do see a lot of realistic people, and they've done a lot of stuff. So those people, it's just individual. So I will test if I feel they need it. I do epigenetic testing, and that really helps me understand why you're the canary in the coal mine and why you're not, because really at the end of the day, that's what I feel. I feel and I see that some people can be exposed to absolutely horrible things and they seem to live a fairly long life and without too many problems. And then you've got the other people who are just sick, chronically sick, and I think that's their epigenetic expression. So I do the assessment. That's number 1. Number 2 is just clean up what they can. So we just start gently. We're cleaning up their house. We're cleaning up what they're doing, what they're putting on their body, in their body. So we just start talking, and I just drip feed. I don't overwhelm them. I don't want them to run away and never come back. So I do that. I also, my third part, depending on what they're coming in for, is calming down the nervous system, and to really, because a lot of people I see are quite stressed, or they have mental health potential issues or neuroinflammation going on. So we bring in lots of techniques and things that will suit them in their lifestyle. So even just going outside and taking their shoes off and connecting to the earth, doing deep diaphragm breathing, you know, that type of stuff, learning about going to bed early and getting the circadian rhythm. So just bringing in a bit of joy into their life. So the nervous system connection to allowing the body to be supported and to heal is really important. The 4th area is where I would focus 100% on reducing inflammation. And this is where I will supplement, or I'll do food as medicine, but I do a lot of supplements in regards to that straight up, because there is chronic inflammatory processing. Where it's coming from exactly, you know, you can go down rabbit holes, but if I can just use, you know, polyphenols or any sort of herbs through whatever means I can, I will do. And I have my favourite ones. And so I'll do that, and then off they go. And then we go into the step 5. And then sometimes that can take a while to get the step 5. And step 5 is really looking at your drainage system. So really looking at the lungs, the organs of elimination. So your lungs, your kidney, your bowel, your liver, bile flow, your skin and your lymph. So this is a big part of what I would do in where to start, is to do those first ones, but then we start gently creating, you know, like getting the urine pH. People go away from my practice in those first appointment or second appointment where we just really monitor someone's urine pH to see how acidic they are, and we just try and flip their body into a much better position so then they can actually detoxify. And then finally, the 6th one is really specific detoxification protocols, and that can take a while. I will sometimes not do any of that for 2 months. I like to set them up first, because if you do too many specifics, they can feel quite sick. You can start moving stuff, particularly if they're currently exposed to things that they can't really remove themselves from, or it's been laying dormant since they were a child, and you know it's there. So the specific ones are very targeted. I do a lot of people eventually buy infrared saunas out here, so that is definitely the research is very solid in helping with removing heavy metals and also chemicals out of our system and activating that lymphatic system. And yeah, I do a lot of naturopathic stuff like bowel cleansing and enemas, and working with colonics. Like sometimes that is a really important part for some people because their bowel has just shut down. So yeah, so there's 6 areas. It's not a quick fix. And people definitely, if they have complex chronic diseases, I always say, look, you're with me if I'm the right person and I can help you. Where this journey is going to be a year or two. This is, you know, you don't have to see me all the time, but it's about the long game, and it's about understanding that your body is designed to heal, and we're just going to do the best we can. Yeah.
That sounds like such a practical framework, and I think it's a really valuable thing to have outlined in this conversation because I know I'm thinking back, decades ago as a naturopathic student. It's so exciting to learn about detox pathways and the nutrients and the herbs that upregulate and downregulate, and it's so easy to just jump to, oh, that's fine, I'll just put you on a detox protocol, not realizing that actually in order to heal, someone must be in a parasympathetic nervous system state. And
Yeah.
even if they didn't have mental health issues, the inflammation from toxins and immune system upregulation is going to cause a nervous system response that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And also reducing the body burden where you can, where you have control within your own four walls is obviously always a great place to start, but in particular when someone has an occupation that maybe they can't do much more about outside of PPE, short of changing a job, it just helps to just really lessen that overall, load that the body's holding. And so what you're really saying here is, although a specific detox protocol based on the organs and tissues that are affected and the things that we know are actually part of that toxin bucket, it's the last step. And it's not a quick step, but you actually have to really set someone up, calm their immune system inflammation down, make sure drainage pathways are open before you start to push things through the body. So I think that's a really, great framework for practitioners to really
Yeah.
take on
Partic-
board.
Particularly if you know and you've done good case taking and you know that there is a history of potential environmental pollutants that they've been exposed to generation after generation. And this is probably what I don't think we get taught enough about. And this is what moving out into the Central West for me, even though back in 2003-4, I was a bit devastated, thinking that I would never have a successful profession and a career and all that. It was the biggest learning curve for me and the best move professionally, because I really got to see what complex chronic diseases do and what they do to the body, and also how you can actually, as a gung-ho new grad, think, yes, I'm going to specifically do that detox and it's going to work. You can open up a can of worms and make people quite sick. And I explain that to people. I say, sometimes having these little toxins in your system, it's sometimes okay to leave them there. There's no rush, and we just want you to have the happiest life that you can have, and as well as you can. And the body will chelate and do what it needs to do, provided we understand the body and understand the physiology and that individual, not what we've learned in the textbook. And I have done lots of training, so it's not what I've worked out. I've done lots of training with amazing doctors over the years who have done chelation, natural chelation, and nutritional medicine, environmental medicine. And I just listen and observe and just do the best I can. But when we bring it back to naturopathic principles, we have the tools. We have it all there, and we're the people that can actually educate people. And I do a lot of education, lots of chatting about, it's not the end of the world. People live happy, healthy lives, and chronic disease can be reduced. But it's just understanding. People don't understand. People don't understand that there's loads of plastics, there's loads of glyphosates in our food. They don't understand that. So it's just doing the best we can. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Well, in terms of like what would constitute a protocol, we can talk a little bit more about the fancy things in a moment. But fundamentally, our body runs on nutrients, and addressing mineral deficiencies, which are essentially ubiquitous these days, is something that you pride yourself on addressing before jumping to, some of those other favorites, which we will talk about in a moment, like polyphenols and other more complex protocols. Would you take us through why trace minerals such as zinc and magnesium and iodine are so central to recovering from chronic
Yeah.
illness?
Yep. I think we forget how important, or we forget to look at the physiology of healing and understand the baseline. So we do need to use minerals. So we have the macro minerals and we have the trace minerals. And trace minerals, particularly zinc, is extremely important in chelation and healing because it's part of a metallothionein, and metallothionein with the sulfur is key into detoxification of metals and chemicals. So it's very busy, the old zinc. And yes, we can eat zinc in our diet, but if you have chronic disease and you have potentially a body load, you need the trace minerals in order to facilitate detoxification. And molybdenum is a very important one, and iodine. And iodine, we are living in a land in Australia. If you're listening from Australia and you live in Australia, we are deficient in iodine. We're an arid landscape. And so trace minerals, we don't have a lot of selenium, iodine, zinc in our soils. So therefore, if they're not in our soils, they're not in our plant, we can't eat them. We don't get them. So this is where, if we could do one thing in supporting people, is to understand the power of trace minerals and just not overdosing, particularly, except zinc. I will use a lot of zinc because it is a big part of the picture in creating the ability for someone to actually assist their body to remove toxic compounds. So yeah, I am a big fan of trace minerals and also macro minerals to allow that pH shift and creating a really good cell exchange in order to allow toxins to move and good stuff to get in. So it's the baseline to me.
It is. Yeah, it's the fundamentals, isn't it? That cellular physiology has to be functioning before we can actually try and upregulate or downregulate.
Yeah, you can't drag
things.
something out when the base is not right. And also the cell membrane. So this is where, the phospholipids and, the cell membrane's made of fat. We need to make sure that's in. So, we should be checking what they're eating and whether or not they've got those things in their food. Often not where I live, so far from the ocean. And so that's another part of the picture that goes really well with the trace minerals, yeah.
Another aspect I'd love to ask you about in terms of calming inflammation. I know when there's persistent immunological provocation, we see that innate immune system chronically triggered, and that can, range from low-grade histamine issues all the way through to MCAS. And of course, inflammation compromises mitochondrial function and everything is energy dependent, including detox. So we've got to support mitochondria and reduce inflammation again before we get to the fancy protocols. What are some of your favorite tools to dial down inflammation, address mast cell sensitivity? What do you like to use in your approach here?
I like to use broad antioxidants. So I will use scoping phenolics, and I love quercetin in a liposomal form. So I'm all about absorption and getting it across the gut wall. So things like green tea and resveratrol and quercetin, any of the phenolics, antioxidants. If I can give a broad spectrum to a person who is not well, that I have learnt over the years and years of treating complex people and fatigue people, it is the step forward in their treatment. And there are lots of reasons why one specific one would work, but I definitely use and I do use those as a supplement. If I can get people to juice and all that sort of stuff, I will. I'm a big fan of green tea. I'm a big fan of herbal teas, actually. So to try and get people to have their herbal teas and educate them. But initially, that's not going to often happen where I'm located with the client base that I see. So I will definitely 100% supplement to reduce that histamine, that inflammation. I will use probiotics at times. It depends. I tell them it's not fixing the problem per se, but it will actually help us get through the next couple of months. So then it's easier for them to make changes.
And respond to what you have on the roadmap.
Yeah, so I do symptomatic care. I say this isn't going to fix it. We're just going to dampen down the immune response that's going a bit crazy at the moment. Let's calm it down, and then we can move forward. And once I do a lot of education so people understand that I'm not just here to sell them supplements. There is a reason why I am going to do the symptomatic care for the first few months while we're trying to remove stuff, identify what's going on. Yeah. Yeah.
Just before we talk about the detox protocol and how you sort of triage which organs you start with, I have a question for you that I'm curious about regarding vitamin D. And my question is around for many practitioners here in Australia. We work in suburban areas, cities, certainly not rural, and most people have indoor jobs. And so vitamin D deficiency is something that, or insufficiency, perhaps
Yeah.
suboptimal levels, is something that we're coming across, almost without exception in our clients. But in your area, given they're, outside of mining, where people are working outdoors, I'm curious to know how often you're coming across that, and also like where you see the use of vitamin D, even when someone has perhaps, okay levels.
Yeah. Good question. So I see vitamin D deficiency hugely, hugely. I never see it high unless they're supplementing. Actually, I had someone yesterday who had elevated vitamin D without supplements. He is a farmer. A lot of farmers out here wear long clothing, so they're not actually getting sun exposure, to be honest. It's actually more on the coast where they'll wear t-shirts, but out here they don't. So they're covered up big time, except, yeah, they've got hats, long sleeve, long pants because of just the arid climate. So, but I did see someone yesterday with really high vitamin D. He has heavy metal exposure. He's having epilepsy, and so where the specialists know that it's an environmental exposure, and so I haven't quite worked out why that's so elevated. He's quite high, but typically I see low all the time. It's a marker of chronic disease. Vitamin D helps with reducing inflammation. It does so many important things. So I often supplement with cod liver oil and then vitamin D. So because I'm trying to do the fish oils as well, but it is a concern. Yeah. Yeah.
It certainly is. Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
thank you for clarifying that, because I'm certainly, for anyone who's perhaps doing telehealth with people in regional areas, it might be easy to assume they're getting more sun, but it's not the case by the sounds of it.
No, not at all. No. Yeah. And it's getting utilised at high rates to mop up the damage of what's going on behind the scenes. So, and you just test. The doctors will test it. It's very common for GPs to test vitamin D out here now. It kind of started a while ago, and it's just now included. They don't now wait for the middle-aged woman to then check. That was what they used to do, but now it's pretty important. Yeah.
Yeah, oh, that's wonderful news. Very glad to hear that, especially as more and more evidence comes through about, its influence on genetic expression, the immune system, all of those beautiful things.
Yeah.
So I guess to sort of summarize, leading up to a detox protocol, after a really thorough assessment and ideally epigenetics, reducing body burden where they have the power to do so, calming the nervous system and reducing inflammation, you then arrive at where you start to really shift the body burden, and that includes optimizing drainage pathways, that they're defecating, urinating, sweating, moving their lymph. And then you sort of arrive at like the Taj Mahal of like naturopathic medicine, where it's time to actually get into, the sexy protocol where you get to use all the fancy tools. But understanding that we're always treating the individual and no detox protocol is going to be exactly the same for others. Do you have a rough kind of framework where you triage, the therapeutic order of, tissues, organs, drainage pathway, or like how do you pull a protocol together for someone? And is it something you often stage, or do you take a multifaceted approach all at the same time?
Yeah. It'd be interesting to ask people who see me, hey.
Wouldn't it?
Okay, so how do we break that one down? So what was the first question?
The first question was like, how do you put things in order? So, for
Yeah,
example, I commonly start with the gut, 25% of detox starts there,
yeah,
and you need that in order for phase two detox to work from the liver. So, then I'll
yeah,
look at the liver.
yeah,
But where you kind of slot in,
yeah,
lungs,
okay.
kidney, skin,
Yeah.
like how would you put that all together?
Yeah. Okay. So it is definitely what they're presenting with. So if they're lung, I calm down the gut and I keep things. Usually the gut's very toxic, and so because it's phase three of detox, and so it's kidney. So I'm really more interested in seeing the kidney to make sure it's ready and it's okay, because I see a lot of kidney issues because, again, where a lot of toxins are being removed, and even pharmaceutical medication. Like there's a lot of medication that people on. I see a lot of people on, 5 to 10 medications. That's why they're coming to me. They're getting side effects. So, they all have an impact on bowel and kidneys. So I would possibly focus a bit more on that. The gut, yes, I calm down the storm. I get them to eat as well as they can, and I do a lot of food as medicine. So people can't, when they're not well, they just can't seem to eat fermentable carbohydrates particularly well, even though we know they should. So I will supplement, non-fermenting fiber. I try and get the gentle. I just keep putting the fiber in and seeing if they can help chelate. But I focus a lot on liver and getting clean bile. So I will use amino acids. I use clean things. In when I say clean, less reactive. So this is where unfortunately herbs become an issue in my practice, because I see people on lots of medications and they can't have a lot of herbs because the specialist won't allow it. So I'll use amino acids. So liver needs amino acids. I use a lot of those, and minerals, in order to set the balance to get the liver flowing better, and the bile if they've got a gallbladder, but to get the bile flowing, because it's a big part of detoxification and recovery with fiber. And I find I've done lots of stool microbiome testing over the decades, to be honest, and I love it. It's very expensive. And when people are chelating, their microbiome will change all the time. So I just understand what's happening. And unless they're coming in with IBD or something like that, I will definitely do microbiome testing. And this is where it's about the individual care. Let's like, what is hurting them the most? Is it their lungs? Is it their sinus and their chronic sinus? Well, then we'll do the breathing. We'll do air purifiers. We'll do you know, microbial support if I have to. But yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm answering your question. I'm going around in circles a little bit
No,
because
no.
it is individual. It's like, where's their pain point? Liver and kidney and lungs are definitely an area that is important to set them up for success, and then going through there. But amino acids, whether it's through food, but I will use, and some of the people that I know, like I have a lot of agronomists who come to me because they're trying to, like they're walking in chemicals, and they know exactly what's happening to their body. So I get really good results with sulfur amino acids. It's like light and day with minerals, light and day.
Amazing. Well,
It
thank you.
is.
It
Yeah.
really, that does help clarify things a lot, because I think it's one thing to go into a case with an idea of here's like the ideal roadmap for detoxification, but also to consider the person in front of you and go, okay, how do we get you feeling better first? Take the load off, and also rejig this roadmap based on what's presenting.
Yeah.
Maybe it's the route of exposure, or it's the tissue that seems to be the most inflamed. That might be the place that you would start. In terms of like your preferred fibers or herbs for gallbladder support, have you got any favorites you can share with us?
Yeah, the fibers. I always start with partially hydrolyzed guar gum because it's a non-fermenting, and
Hmm.
it's just the safe that's the entry level. I say we're going to have an entry level. I assess how much fiber they're having, and often they don't. We try and work gently and bringing in non-fermentables, because they'll come back, number one. And I also will then use a broad spectrum, like I have a product that I absolutely love, and I said this is the end game. So sometimes, and that's it's got soluble, insoluble, and we're going to try and get those fibers up because. And sometimes I start with that. I said let's start with that and see what your tummy does, because then it tells me whether we've got some funky stuff going on there. So so I like. Slippery elm. I like a little bit of psyllium, not too much, because I find it really upsets sensitive people. And all the known prebiotic fibers. I mean, there's so many coming up now through the companies, which is great. And but as many fibers, and I try and do the game of let's see how many plant or coloured foods you can have over a week. So we do the 20 food thing. Do that for the next month or the next week and see how you go. How much variety are you getting in grains and plants and vegetables, and let's have a look at what fiber's going in. So it
sounds like a good combination of, food as medicine, really sustainable approach through the diet, but then some just very considered supplements, and in particular avoiding fermentable fibers initially. And I think as a clinicians, it's important to identify where someone's at and meet them. What's the next step? Not trying to take them to end game immediately. And I think part of the challenge with that is we do live in a culture where people have this desire for a magic bullet and to sort of shortcut the healing process. And I think part of the challenge can sometimes be managing expectations and really laying out that roadmap, and also really educating the patient on why you're giving them what you're giving them. But certainly I think the 6-step approach that you have shared with us today makes so much sense. It's really considerate and respectful of the person's body and where they are, and allows plenty of flexibility in order to move someone towards being ready for a formal detoxification protocol in and of itself.
The other thing that people sometimes come in and they say, look, I need to do a detox because I've got all this stuff and I know I'm not well. And the other thing that we forget is that we're detoxifying every day. So I said, you're doing that every day. You're doing it all the time. So let's have a look at just making that work a bit better. And they go, oh, so I don't have to do this 4-week massive detox. No. At times we can if there's a problem, but we're just going to help you do it better because you are doing a good job. It just might be a bit tired, and let's just facilitate it. And people don't understand a lot of I think success definitely with what I've done is I just meet people where they're at, and I understand the biology and the physiology and understand the big scope of chronic disease.
Yes. Your experience and expertise here is absolutely evident. And Liza, I can't thank you enough for your time today. It was just absolutely brilliant. And I know we're going to put all of Liza's contact details in the show notes, because if you are a clinician looking to grow and deepen your knowledge in this area around detoxification and complex cases, Liza does have business mentoring and online programs and courses. If you are not a practitioner, but maybe you are a person who's been dealing with chronic illness and there's an element of toxicity in there, there's actually a great free guide to clean living on Liza Twohill's website as well. We will be certain to link that in the show notes, which is a really good place to start. It's really, I guess, jumping to step 2, cleaning up what you can in your life by reducing your overall toxin load. So Liza, thanks again for taking us through your approach to complex cases, and to our listeners, thank you for joining us today. Remember, you can find all of the show notes and other related podcasts on the Australian Designs for Health website. I'm Amy Skilton, and this is Wellness by Designs.